Hi friends, I'm Kat. Welcome to my channel, and today's video we're going to be going over all of the books that I read in January. So I have my stack here, I have some Kindle Unlimited books to talk about, some audiobooks, and overall it was a pretty good reading month. I read a lot less than I usually do, which, contrary to probably everyone else in life, this was my goal for the year, is that I want to read a lot less and just take more time to be present and conscious about what I'm reading. Just really focus more on quality versus quantity. So welcome to today's video. We have 17 books overall to talk about, which yes, still is a fair amount. So I'm not going to be talking too much about each one of these because I don't want to be here for an hour, and let's just dive into it. So to start off with, let's just take a little overview at some stats. So like I said, 17 books. No, 7 of them are from my physical TBR, and 1 was from audio, 2 Kindle Unlimited, and then the rest were library. For ratings, I had 6 5 stars, which crazy, 6 4 stars, also crazy, 4 3 stars, and 1 2 star. So that brings to an average rating of 4 stars, which amazing. Exactly, like I'm focusing on quality, right? Like this was such a fantastic reading month for that. And then a little genre breakdown. So there were 5 fantasy, 4 fantasy romance, 3 thrillers, 1 just like fiction. I didn't really know what other genre to classify it in, 2 romance, and 2 horror. So I'm really trying to get back into my fantasy era, which there we go, that's representing it. And I'm trying to focus, I don't know why, but for some reason I'm trying to focus more on fantasy and fantasy romance this year. So we'll see. We'll see how those statistics play out at the end of the year. And now just going over all of the books, I'm gonna go chronologically. That is easiest for me right now. So starting off with the first book that I read for the year is What the River Knows. So we're following a teenage girl in Buenos Aires. I believe this is in the early 1900s, late 1800s, and her parents are researchers in Egypt. So she is notified that they have recently passed away, and she decides to go to Egypt to try and figure out what happened to them, because it kind of sounds like things might have been under mysterious circumstances. And when she gets there, she meets up with her mother's brother, who is very, very insistent that she leave Egypt immediately, not start looking into this, and that really needs to be like, she needs to be as far away as possible. She takes this as a red flag and starts like doing everything she can to fight against him and figure out what happened to her parents. So this went a really interesting way with like discovering magic, discovering secrets about the family, discovering all of these like weird twisty plots and like things that everything she's believing being turned on its head, and really coming to realize that her parents were not at all the people that she thought she was, or not at all the people that she thought they were. I really thought that this was super fun, and it was just something very, very interesting. I like Egyptian mythology, I like magic books. This kind of worked that way. So yeah, overall this was just like a really, really fun story of a girl trying to uncover like her family secrets, and this is one that I gave 4 stars. Honestly, it was just really enjoyable. There wasn't, looking back on it, nothing that really was that spectacular about it. Like at this point I feel like it could be anywhere between a 3 and a 4 realistically for me. It didn't do anything that exciting, and it's not necessarily going to be something that I think will stay in my head, but I did think that this was a pretty enjoyable read. So my first 5 star of the year was Whis by Ian Reid, and this is, I guess, technically classified as a horror, but we are following an elderly woman who is potentially dealing with dementia, and we don't really know, and that's kind of the scary part about it, is that we are following her as she's, honestly the first part was intensely sad, just following like her years after she's kind of lost the ability to do basically anything that she used to find enjoyable. So her partner has passed, she's living alone, and her life has really diminished to the point that she has absolutely nothing going on for herself. Not even, I don't even want to say it that way, it's just she really doesn't have any joy in her life anymore. Like, she used to love reading, but now her brain can't fully like follow a book. She used to love hosting dinner parties, but now she doesn't have many friends alive anymore. She and her husband used to do all of these activities, but he passed away, and all of these things that is just, it's her very slow, sad. And after a fall, she is brought to this old age home where she is told that she and her partner set this up years before, that if she got to that point where she couldn't take care of herself, this is where she would go. She doesn't remember this, so she feels like she's being sent here against her own will, and that perhaps all of these people are plotting against her. So the first half of this book was probably one of the saddest things I've ever read, because it was just such a slow like loss of her, like losing all of her joys that she has had for this point. And then the second part is her in this institution, and things are weird. Things are really, really strange, but you don't know if that is just her slowly losing her mind, slowly losing the ability to understand what's happening, or if it's actually the institution doing nefarious things to her and the other residents. And honestly, like, that was kind of the scariest part, is that you really don't know what's happening. And obviously our main character has no idea either. And it just felt very unhinged, very scary, very, very just like loss of sense and loss of self. And it was kind of terrifying, very sad, very terrifying. And this was like truly an insanely good book because of that. So yeah, this was one that kind of like messed with my head a little bit, but absolute 5-star. So good. The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This is, I'm happy to say, the first Riley Sager book that I've enjoyed in quite a few years. And perhaps we may say his rise back to writing good books. And this one we're following the caretaker of a like Lizzie Borden-esque murderer, or suspected murderer. So Lenora Hope is this elderly woman who has been confined to her bed for years at this point. She has like reportedly been suffered from polio, and it left her without the ability to speak or communicate or really do anything. But when she was 17, she was suspected of having basically mass murdered her family. There was this really mysterious, I guess, group murder, her parents and her sister, and nobody was ever really able to figure out what happened. But all of these years, it has been suspected that Lenora was the one who was behind it. And we're following a new caretaker of hers as she basically is sent to here as a punishment. This is like her last potential job. If she doesn't succeed on this one, she'll be fired, because she is also suspected of having maybe killed a patient. And while there, she decides to start trying to communicate with Lenora and maybe see if she can get a way to get the full story from her. Maybe, you know, because it seems like Lenora maybe is hiding how well she's able to actually communicate. So maybe she'll be able to get this story out of her and figure out what actually happened. And this one had so many good twists in it. It really, like, to the end, like, kept me on my toes, and it just had so many interesting things happening, so many twists and turns, so many like weird little plot points that I was not expecting. And I gave this a 4-star because it was thoroughly fun and thoroughly surprising. Another deeply disturbing book that got a 5 stars for me is All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. So we're following, it is I believe a southern town, it must be, the first Black sheriff of this town, and he is in this small town that is deeply racist, and a lot of people are against this fact that he is a Black sheriff, and just really, I don't know, sheriff or police chief, one of the two, but he is called in to a school shooting, and when there, the suspect, he goes in, kills one teacher, and then when he comes out and the police officers are all surrounding him, he keeps just saying like, check the guy's phone, this is not, you don't know what's happening. And this guy ends up being killed in the process. But when they go start to investigate the teacher, they find some really, really messed up things. And they find this whole potential plot of, it seems like there has been a serial killer in their midst for years and years, and nobody has figured it out because it has all been Black teenagers who have been being killed this entire time. So up until this point, none of the police officers really have bothered to put that much like time and energy into investigating things. And this one was really disturbing. This is one that, yes, it was incredible, but it was definitely disturbing. And if you're going to read it, please, more than probably any of these other books, read the content warnings for it. But it really delves into the history of this racist small town and this really messed up history of years and years of corruption and things that have been just overlooked in all this time, and really has some incredibly gruesome and disturbing scenes. It was so well written, it was so interesting, it was such an engrossing mystery, but yeah, definitely a little disturbing too. Of like everyone I know who's read this book, I think I've given it the highest rating, which is The Hurricane Wars. So this is a fantasy romance novel. I gave it a 4 stars, but just quick spoiler. Honestly, looking back, I kind of have no idea what happened. So this is intensely, heavily Reylo coded. We are like fully straight up. You plop out like Kylo Ren and Rey from Star Wars and drop them into a fantasy world. And it is exactly that. It is straight up their characters. Like the plot points so similar, like everything, it is fully Star Wars. But we're in this world, it's like a magical world where we have the Dark Kingdom that is trying to take over the rest of the world, and they have dark shadow magic. but there used to be light magic people, and the dark magic people have wiped out all of the light magic users except for one, an orphan who is working for the opposing army. And they meet on the battlefield and instantly have this incredible connection while still fighting against each other. And I don't really want to get too much more into that because I feel halfway through the book things go wildly different, but it is an enemies to lovers between these two opposing magic users on different sides of armies. And yeah, it is straight up Kylo Ren and Rey, but I liked it because Reylo stuff works really well for me. And yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I did give it a 4-star because I had a lot of fun with it. Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid ended up being a 5-star for me as well, which not expecting by any means, because this was intensely focused on tennis and like really very much a lot of tennis happened in this book. So we're following Carrie Soto, who back in her prime was considered the best tennis player of all time. She really like revolutionized the tennis world, won all of these records, smashed all of these goals, and ended up retiring earlier than she wanted to because of a knee injury, and she kind of started to slip a bit in her game. So we're following her 10 years after that fact, after there is a new young competitor who is coming up and about to take her title as like the most Grand Slam winners of all time. So seeing this, Carrie decides to go back from retirement into the tennis world and try to defend her title. So this is like such a story of somebody going against all the odds, really, because at this point she is late in her 30s and she is considered way too old to be a tennis star. She's 10 years out of it, so she also like really is not up to the same par that all the other players are, and just nobody thinks that she's going to succeed in this. So it's her trying her hardest to accomplish this, and also like reconcile the fact that when she was in tennis, she was like labeled by the media as the bitch because she was cold-hearted. She was not there to make friends, you know? And it's kind of her making this change in perspective of winning doesn't necessarily have to be everything, and there is nothing wrong with making friends along the way. It sounds super cheesy, but this was great. I really like this. And yeah, it was super tennis focused, which can't really be surprised at that, but it didn't take away anything for me. If anything, it kind of just made me really want to get into tennis one day. So we really were on such like a 5-star kick this month, because next we have The Will of the Many by James Islandon, which is also a 5-star read. I might struggle a little with the definition of this one, or the description of this one, but we are heavily focused on, I would say, kind of a Roman inspired fantasy world where there's this empire that has, through the last like few years, slowly been expanding its territory and taking over others. And we are following the believed to be deceased prince of one of these realms that was taken over, who has now been hiding as an orphan within this empire. So there is this really unique magic system called the will, where certain people are able to harness the will of others. So it's like a pyramid thing where everybody like adds in, I don't know, I'm gonna say like seed their will to a certain amount of like the lowest of the low. They have nothing. They give their will to other people, and then the higher up, the more they are able to harness of the below people. So the higher you are up in the society, the more powerful you are, the more like literally powerful you are, because you're able to access all of this magic from all of these other people. But our main character, he catches the attention of a nobleman within this society who has been looking for somebody they could take under their wing for a while now to send to this magical school and kind of investigate things, because this nobleman's younger brother had died there a few years ago, and things are kind of mysterious. Like there's a few things that it sounds like things are going weird at this school, and there's a lot of secrets, and he just wants somebody who he can send in and really find out all the secrets. So he adopts our main character and sends him in as his adoptive son with the sole purpose of, one, learning there and becoming very powerful, because that is good for him, and also trying to figure out exactly what's happening, because the more there is also seeming like there is a bunch of mysterious deaths. So we're following his year at this school, him discovering all these secrets, like this really intense like fight within the school. Every level, there's a triangle system of ranking at the school where like you want to be in the top, and each class, it's like you have to fight your way up to each spot, and like somebody gets demoted if you go up and stuff. But it is so interesting. Like I don't really know what else to say about this one because I don't want to get too much into it, but this was incredible. incredibly interesting. And I think one of the ones where at the end of the book, I can't remember the last time I did this, but I closed it and was like, what the fuck just happened? The ending of this book is insane, and I think I'm gonna die if I don't get it the second one soon. So dramatic, but wow, this ending was insane. So yeah, this was a 5-star. Highly recommend. This is one of the best new fantasy releases I've read in quite some time. Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. Super disappointing. This was a 2-star read for me. I did talk more about this one in my Reading YouTubers Worst of 2023 video, so I'm not going to say too much, but basically this was boring. The mystery that happens was not interesting, and it was just incredibly predictable. So yeah, would not recommend this. Definitely the worst book I've read from Ashley Winstead, and I have loved everything else I've read from her. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So I gave it a 4, but I do have to say, I think the movie was better. So this is fully just President Snow's villain origin story, and kind of the making into the transformation of the Hunger Games from into the really intense spectacle that it was in the movies. It was good. I really enjoyed the story. I do have to say that. I just found that the writing was a little young in this one, which even though it was more for a YA audience, it just felt very young for some reason. Just something about the writing wasn't that great, especially when you're dealing again with these complex things. And yeah, something about it just didn't hit as hard for me as the movie. 4 stars, but just entirely because I really liked the story. Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. This, I'm really going back and forth on if I want this to be a 3 or 4 star. I landed on a 4 because I think it's going to kind of be in the 3.5 area, but this, I really don't know how I feel about it. But it is a romance between it's YA. It's a young girl and a rugby player at her high school. And it was one of those books that so many people recommended this, and I went in reading it entirely because of that. And I don't know what I was expecting. I definitely wasn't expecting it to be YA. It wasn't even really YA though, because it was spicy, but we're also following 16-year-olds, so that felt super weird. And it was just this really emotional, intense love story. But I don't know, the emotional parts of what worked for me, none of the spice stuff did, because I just felt uncomfortable with that. And it was weird. It was weird. I didn't really love our male main character. Just the constant over-sexualization of all the women that he was talking about, I didn't love. But there's just there was a lot of really emotionally hard-hitting elements that did work for me. And I think that's more of what I'm focusing on right now. That's giving it a higher rating. But overall, I don't know if I liked it that much, to be honest. I think it's just one of those examples of something that it did impact me emotionally, so I think I like it. So yeah, this one, I don't know. I still haven't fully decided. I'm giving it a 4 star, but I don't really know if that's going to be the rating that I stick with forever. Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare is her first adult book, and we are following the crown prince of a nation and his sword catcher, who's basically his body double or personal guard. So this was boring. I gave it a 3 star because I think that there were some things that were starting to kind of be interesting, but this was boring. And when I think of what could I describe about this book, I don't know. There's some kind of rebellion, kind of, maybe. We're following a healer also. What else? I don't know what else to say. It wasn't really that interesting. There wasn't really a lot that happened, and I only read it 2 weeks ago, but I really can't remember much else about it. It was overall just very forgettable, very disappointing, and not that interesting. I'm not going to talk too much about the next one too, because it is book 13 in the Wheel of Time. So this is Towers of Midnight, and I'm not going to discuss just too much because book 13 in a series, pretty much anything I say is going to be a spoiler. So I'll just say it was 5 stars for me. It was my first time reading this. I'm doing a reread of The Wheel of Time, and previously in the past, I've gotten to book 12 on 5 different occasions and then stopped because I didn't want to finish it. But I'm forcing myself to actually go through with it this time. And yeah, so this is book 13. I really enjoyed it. I really like this. And currently I'm reading book 14, which is the last book, and I'm going to be emotionally devastated, I think. Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score. It is book 3 in her Knock 'Em Out series, which is a small town romance series. I really liked book 1, hated book 2. So I was going into book 3 a little apprehensive, I guess, about how this one could go, because it really could go either way. We have a 50-50 chance. And I'm really happy to say that this one really worked on so many levels for me. It was a 4 star, which I'm so happy about. But this, again, it's a small town romance. We're following Sloane and Lucien, who are basically, this is their, I would say, second chance romance slash sort of enemies to lovers. Not quite, but like they've had a little enemies thing for the past few years. And they, as teenagers, they had something going on, but Sloane betrayed Lucien's trust doing something, and they have never quite gone past that. So after the death of her father, Lucien kind of steps into a lot of things with her family, and they're kind of thrust together in a lot of ways that they weren't previously. They start working together on a project, and they're forced to spend a lot more time together than they really have at any point in the past like 10 years or so. And from there they start to kick off a romance, and I really like this one. It was great. I don't know what else I don't know what else to say about this one, but I really liked it. I like this type of, I don't know, I liked Lucien as a character, I like Sloane as a character, I like them together, and what else needs to be said? Bonded by Thorns was my book club pick with my friends this month, and this is a why choose romance between a human woman and 4 fae princes, and it's the first in the series, so not a lot happened in this one. It was very much a woman goes to the fae realm, she is taken prisoner, and while there she starts to maybe form a romance with all 4 of these fae princes of the different realms who live in this castle. And yeah, it's set up, I think this one's set up a few good things. It hopefully, in book 2, which I'm reading this month for my book club, hopefully things will follow through and get very interesting and steamy in the next book. But I do think that it definitely set up a lot of things to be interesting. Like there was a lot of things about, I don't know, just a lot of hints that things are going to be very fun. And, you know, there's an enchantress, there's an evil prince, there's all these things that could make it interesting. Natural Beauty is another kind of horror. I did classify it as horror. I don't really know if it's like quite there book that I gave it 5 stars to. So this, it reminded me a lot of Rouge by Mona Awad, but much better. In this, we're following a woman who, she is given a job at this like really elusive and very exclusive and well-renowned cosmetics company. So they are known for having like some of the most sought after products on the market, but also kind of controversial because they come from, all of them seem to be weird animal, like synthetic animal products, like things that are very much like extracted from animals or something. And she's offered a job as a saleswoman, which is great for her. She's really happy about this because she's struggling extremely financially. But with the job comes a lot of like, you have to very exclusively use their products. You have to test their products, which sometimes leads to really weird shit happening. Like if your eyes, like you use a certain eyelash serum and your eyes can't open for a few days, and it's like, it's okay, just deal with it. Then also they heavily, like everybody is on this intense vitamin regime that you cannot stray from, and we're following as she like works there for several months and is slowly kind of like joining into the rhetoric of how important beauty is, but also it keeps being hinted at that she is very much changing. So she is not necessarily noticing it herself, but she is kind of, her features are changing. So she is kind of slowly becoming more uniform looking with the other salespeople at one point. So she is Chinese, our main character, and at one point they start like suggesting that she have a more white name to better serve the staff or better serve the clients. It's also very much hinted that her like hair starts slowly turning blonde, and there's a few hints here and there that make it sound like her facial features are becoming more Eurocentric, and very much like she doesn't realize this because it is happening so slowly, and she's kind of like really leaning into the teachings. But then things start going weird and she starts getting suspicious, and it is so intensely good. Of this, I would say it like the story of striving for incredible beauty and then having everything ripped away from you, or really like leaning into this message but then realizing that everything you've been told is a lie. And it was so good. I feel like I would say it's like a little bit haunting and just, I don't know, overall just so good. It's so interesting, and definitely like one of the books that made me think the most this month. Like it just had a lot of things that really, I don't know, made me think about like the cosmetics industry. And I think this work, it had a similar, like I was saying, similar ideas to Rouge by Mona Awad, but this one worked so much better because in Rouge, it felt like a fever dream. It felt like you had no idea what's happening. The main character had no idea. But in Natural Beauty, you are really following her as you see her get immersed into this rhetoric and you understand why she is. And I feel like that gave so much more of an impression versus Rouge. Really, like it felt like she was being brainwashed or like she was under a sedative and just kind of going with the flow. Whereas Natural Beauty, you could see her making these decisions and like really really understanding what's happening but deciding to go forward anyway. Iron Flame is the sequel to Fourth Wing, and this was, I know I'm not gonna be the only person to say this, but I was disappointed in this and I gave it a 3-star, where I was one of those people who, yes, deeply loved Fourth Wing and gave it 5 stars and was completely addicted with it. So yeah, everything about this. So overall, I think that this was a decent second installment in a series. It just kind of did expand the world. It gave us more information about a lot of things. Like, it did progress the plot and everything. It was kind of boring. And that's really my biggest complaint, is that it didn't have the same thrilling aspects as Fourth Wing. It didn't have those things that kept me like addicted and kept me wanting to go forward. It was just okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. It was still decent. I still enjoyed it. It just wasn't as good as Fourth Wing for me. So it is a 3-star. Again, nothing wrong with that. It just wasn't as good for me. And the final book that I did read in January was A River of Golden Bones. So this is a Sleeping Beauty retelling, which honestly, it took me way too long into the book to realize this, but we are following 2 sisters who are these wolf shifter princesses who have been in hiding for however many years, 20 years, I guess. So on the day of their birth, an evil sorceress came into the land while their mother was giving birth and basically slaughtered the entire royal family. And the 2 princesses were able to be ferried off were able to be brought out of the palace and brought to live with a fairy godmother for safety. And all this time, the entire realm has basically thought that they were dead. Nobody really knows what might have happened. And they, on their 20th birthday, they are sent to another kingdom. So the girls are golden wolves, but they are sent to the silver wolf kingdom because there has been an agreement in place since their birth, or before their birth, I guess, that the oldest daughter will wed the oldest son of the silvers, and they will create a union and they will work together, because to this point they've been rival kingdoms, but together their union, blah blah blah, And partway through the book, the sorceress comes back and curses the eldest princess into a slumber. So the rest of the book, we are following the younger girl who has, up until this entire point in her life, been training basically to be a guard for her sister and to be her sister's bodyguard. So we're following her as she goes on a mission to find a way to wake up her sister, but also take down the sorceress. And yeah, it was fine. It was fine. It really wasn't that spectacular. It wasn't that interesting, I guess. It was okay. I think that the world building was seriously lacking in this one. The character development was, and there was just a lot of things that were poorly explained. And those were definitely my biggest complaints, is that it just felt lacking in a lot of ways. And it felt like things could have been much better explained. So I gave it a 3-star. It was fine. It just wasn't really anything that exciting. And yeah, there we go. This was my January wrap up. Hopefully this wasn't too long, because it's been almost an hour that I've been sitting here filming. So hopefully this didn't end up being too long. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I'm really excited for February because I am planning on reading a bunch of romance and fantasy romance and just really having fun with the month of love. If you haven't already, I would love if you guys would subscribe, like this video, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Bye.